The fall of Rome is a topic that occupies the minds of many a historian. Almost everybody who touches the discipline will have heard of this event. But the Western Roman Empire was not just the city of Rome, but a vast expanse of provinces and territories. So rather than focusing in on the final days of the Western Roman Empire, we will look into the more long-term loss of the empire's provinces and the reasons for its decreasing borders. The province where we begin our story is that of Britannia. Ever since the early 1st century AD, the Romans had been in control of England and Wales, and over time the local population had assimilated to become Romanized as the Romano-Britons. But the fall of Roman Britain is not cut and dry, and it is a lot more complicated than we would imagine. Rather than being an immediate loss for the empire, the province declined over the 4th and 5th centuries, leading to its eventual slipping out of Roman control. One of the main contributors to this was the constant internal strife within the Roman Empire. Many imperial pretenders were actually proclaimed emperor on the British Isles themselves, and each time this happened, this pretender would take some of the garrison in Britannia to support his claim to the Roman throne, and this would have drastic effects on the province. As the internal strife was eating away at the Roman Empire, so too were raiders from Scotland, Ireland, and even across the sea from Germany and Denmark. The Picts, Scots, Saxons, and many other tribes were regularly raiding the province throughout the late 4th and early 5th centuries. And with a growing lack of Roman soldiers to garrison the province, it became a lot harder to maintain prosperity. And as such, it became much more dangerous for Romano-Britons to inhabit urban centres, since they were the first places that raiders would target. This, as well as the worsening of Roman economics due to continuous debasement of Roman currency, would lead to urbanization in Roman Britain. The effect of this was that it became much harder for Rome to maintain centralized control of the province. Urban centers were the way in which Roman officials would be able to control the province, and so a lack of functioning urban centers led to a decrease in Roman control. And eventually Roman civil war left almost no Roman military presence in Britannia, and if we are to believe the source from Zosimus, then the Britons actually expelled Roman administrators from the province in 409 AD. The gradual conquest of England by the Anglo-Saxon tribes forced the Romano-Britons west, where their culture shifted to become much more rooted in a Celtic background, as opposed to a Roman one. And so Britannia was the first of many casualties in the Western Roman Empire. Another nail in the coffin for Rome was its loss of Hispania, or modern-day Spain. This occurred in a slightly different way to the loss of Britannia. In the early 5th century, some Germanic tribes managed to breach the Rhine and had started roaming the province of Gaul and later moved south into Hispania. This was much more of a fight for influence over the province between the various Germanic tribes and the Roman government. The Roman government actually sponsored one of these tribes, the Visigoths, to eliminate the other Germanic tribes' presences in Hispania, in order to make it easier for Rome to maintain influence in the province. The Visigoths did this because they were promised a home in Hispania, which they actually did receive. The Alans and the Vandals, the two other of the Germanic tribes who'd been in Hispania, left the province in 429 AD, moving into North Africa instead. And this is important, and we'll get back to it. Rome did actually manage to maintain control over most of Hispania until about 461 AD. The death of the Emperor Majorian spelled the end of the province as part of the Western Roman Empire. Much of this was caused by Rome's inability to project its influence, and this was largely caused by the Roman loss of North Africa, given that it cut off one of their main sources of grain and also interrupted, supply chains from Italy to Hispania. As well as this, a continual dwindling of Roman military resources meant that much of their administrative capability was therefore centralized in Italy, as opposed to the now fringe province of Hispania. And as a result, control was mostly delegated to the new occupants of the peninsula, the Visigoths, who managed to unite much of Hispania under their control. The Visigothic king actually did hold titles that were granted by the Western Roman Emperor, where the Visigothic king ruled Hispania in the name of the Western Roman Emperor. And the Visigothic kingdom in Spain was basically independent, even though this was the case, given that Rome could not actually effectively project its power or influence there. Now we move to North Africa, and this is very intertwined to the fate of the entire Western Roman Empire, since the province was a very, very large source of manpower and grain. In 429 AD, as we said, the Vandals and the Alans entered northern Africa, and they were attracted there by its riches, but they were also pushed out of Hispania by the Visigoths. And led by their king Gaiseric, the Vandals marched to the city of Hippo Regius and took it after a short siege. And in just 10 years, by 439 AD, the Vandals had taken Carthage, which was the most important Roman city in North Africa. As well as the Vandals, many Berber tribes actually reconquered areas of North Africa, and newly established kingdoms were, well, spawning outside of both Roman and Vandal control. The loss of North Africa had dire consequences for Rome. Firstly, they were now no longer able to rely on North African grain to sustain their empire. And there was also now a large Vandal fleet, which interrupted the interconnected economy of the Western Mediterranean. And the main consequence of the interruption of the Western Mediterranean economy was the loss of control in Hispania, given that trade to the province was much more difficult, and maintaining control there became much harder, since the Roman influence there was significantly reduced. Now we come to the last of the provinces we'll look at today, which is Gaul. It starts with the reign of Emperor Majorian, and Majorian actually appoints a man called Aegidius as Magister Militum of Gaul. Essentially, Aegidius was granted military control over Gaul as a senior military officer. Together with Majorian, much of Gaul was maintained as a Roman province, until Majorian died. At this point, many Roman resources in Gaul were then redistributed to Italy in order to protect the heartland of the empire from foreign incursion. And this meant that large regions of Gaul, especially in the south and the east, were left completely defenceless. And these power vacuums were then filled by Germanic tribes like the Burgundians and the Franks, who assumed governorship of large areas of Gaul. But Aegidius and Roman influence did not disappear at the time of Majorian's death. Aegidius actually managed to maintain a Roman domain in northern Gaul for many years after Majorian's death, and even his son Syagrius, or Aegidius' son Syagrius, managed to inherit this de facto kingdom. However, throughout the entirety of the existence of the domain of Soissons, which is what this Roman domain was called, the Roman rulers maintained that they were only governing the province in the name of the Western Roman Emperor. Other sources refer to them as kings of the Romans, meaning that it's likely that the Germanic tribes surrounding this polity actually believed it to be a holdout of the Roman Empire, and thus Soissons was the last point of Roman influence in Gaul. Eventually, this kingdom was actually conquered by the Franks at the Battle of Soissons, ending the last Roman pocket in Gaul. In fact, the kingdom of Soissons actually existed past the point of 476 AD, where many consider Rome to have fallen, and so it could be argued that this was actually the last area where the Western Roman Empire still existed. However, that is a debate for another time, and actually I have made another video discussing 476 AD and the notion of the fall of Rome, so you should check that out. Anyways, I hope this video has offered more clarity to the exact way in which the Roman Empire diminished in size and slowly kind of crumbled away. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.